Hello, guys. So, today we're going to be talking about motivation, and I'm sure you're all very familiar with this word. Now, within this lesson, and we're basically in this lesson today, we're basically going to be talking about different motivational theories, okay? So, as a beginning, I just want to introduce the concept of motivation. Here in your book, motivation is defined as the intrinsic and extrinsic factors that stimulate people to take actions that lead to achieving a goal. So, what do we mean by intrinsic and extrinsic factors? Intrinsic factors are basically the factors that come from within the human being. The sensations we feel, the feelings we feel. Extrinsic factors are usually something tangible. So, again, intrinsic factors are usually something that's intangible, and extrinsic factors are things that are tangible, basically. Okay. And as I said, intrinsic motivation, basically, as you can see from the presentation, it comes from the satisfaction derived from working on and completing a task. And when we say the satisfaction that comes from inside of you. Okay. Now, extrinsic motivation comes basically, as I mentioned, from external rewards, like your salary. An example of intrinsic motivation a would be let's say for example, a pat on the back. Your boss would be coming and patting you on the back and telling you, good job, you've done a good job for today. But an extrinsic motivation would be they're giving you for example, an extra reward this month because you've done something extra. Now now, why do we have a full chapter on motivation? What is the importance of motivation when it comes to work? Basically, you think about yourself. If you are a well motivated employee, okay, you're gonna try to help the organization you're working with as much as you can, okay. Also, you're gonna try to basically, you are going to be you'll be reaching your own goals as well because you'll be already motivated, okay. And if you're not motivated, if you don't have any motivation, you will be performing very poorly, trying your best. For example, you're not going to be attending work, you're going to be absent most of the time, you're not going to do your work in the best way possible, you're not going to be productive enough. And why is that? Because you're already motivated, okay. Basically, and we all know that motivated staff are basically they have higher productivity, they usually stay with the firm longer, they try to improve the firm, they seek promotion, seek responsibility, and so on. Okay. Now, let's move to indicators of poor staff motivation. How do we know that employee is not motivated, us as a company? How do we know that employee is not motivated? Number one is absenteeism, meaning that employee is absent most of the time. What do I mean by absent most of the time? Let's say there is a vacation on, let's say, Thursday. He's absent on Wednesday and Tuesday, or there is a vacation on Wednesday and there is work on Thursday. He's absent on that day, or so he have so many excuses for being absent. You can see that he's not motivated to come to work. Number two, lateness. That person is always late for work, no matter what. Poor performance. That person is not performing well, okay. He's not doing his job in the right way. Accidents and grievances. When we talk about grievances here, we're talking about, the sometimes people from people gather from employees from the same job gather together, and then they basically take signs and they make, campaigns to complain about that. They stop their work, they grieve, they stop working, and they just, claim other rights that they want from that company. So basically, that's what we talk about grievances. Grievances is basically when the employee stop working until his demands are, uh, you know, um, until people actually do what he wants. Okay. Oh. And then we move to labor turnover. We already talked about that concept before, which is basically employees leaving the job. Um, the job moving from one employee to another because people just keep quitting. Poor response rate. What do we mean by poor response rate? We're talking about the leader here. Basically, the employee is not responding to the leader instructions or the manager's instructions and so on. Now, moving on to motivational theories. Okay, we have different motivations theory. Starting from, we're gonna start talking about Taylor and scientific management. Okay, so the first theory we're gonna talk about is Taylor and scientific management. Now, Taylor, basically, his idea was to find the quickest, most efficient way to get a job done using money as the main motivator. Meaning, um, the more you did the work, the more you get paid. So Taylor's theory was more of money. Okay, if you work, you get paid. You get so basically, it's all about money. The more you work, the more you get. Simple as that. Okay. Now, um, basically, we have 7 steps to improving worker productivity when it comes to Taylor's theory. And the first one is select workers to perform a task, then absorb them performing the task and note the key elements of it. Record the time taken to do each part of the task. Okay. Number 4, identify the quickest method recorded. 5, train all workers in the quickest method and do not allow them to make any changes to it. 6, supervise workers to ensure that this best way is being carried out and time them to check that the set time is not being exceeded. Pay workers on the basis of results. And I think the steps um, are quite explicit. They're explaining themselves by himself, but you're always free to ask any question and to let me know if you do not understand anything. Now, I also like you to check page 176 to page 177 to check Taylor's approach to modern industry, and really recommend you check that table. Let me know if there is anything ununderstandable. I'll be happy to explain it. Now, moving on to another type of theory, which is Maslow's hierarchy of human needs. Now, Maslow's hierarchy of human needs is actually one of the most popular theories of motivation. Okay. And Maslow, what is Maslow saying here? Maslow's saying, actually, this is the hierarchy of needs for Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and Maslow's saying, if you are satisfied with one level from this pyramid or from this hierarchy, you'll be able to move to the next level and get satisfied. But example, if you're satisfied in your physiological needs, okay, if you're done satisfied with your physiological needs, then you'll be able to be satisfied in your safety needs. After satisfying your safety need, then you can start satisfying your love belonging needs. So this is how Maslow is explaining this hierarchy. Now, what do you mean by psychological needs? Psychological needs are basically basic needs, like, as you can see here, food, shelter, water, rest. This is what we mean by physical need. When we come to safety needs, we're talking about protection here. We're talking about security. We're talking about health. All of these things, that basically makes a human being safe in where he is now. And then we move on to social needs, what we can also call them love and belonging needs, and they include trust, acceptance, friendship, belonging, all of these things. So basically, and then we move to esteem needs, as you can see here, esteem needs. And esteem needs are basically, the status, the recognition of achievement you can get from other people, all these things that can actually improve your self esteem. Now, finally, on the top of the hierarchy, we have the self actualization, which is basically you reaching your full potential. Okay. Um, Now, basically, as I was saying, Maslow's hierarchy explains stuff like this, as in, if you're satisfied with your food, if you have food, shelter, water, then you can move on to be satisfied for safety. Then you can move on to social, then self-esteem needs, and finally self-actualization. Now, and basically this is how Maslow is stating that motivation is usually interpreted. Now, let's look at some limitations to Maslow's theory. Now, when we look at this theory, actually not everyone had the same needs, you know not everyone goes by this hierarchy at all, because we're all human beings. We're different from each other. Our way of looking to each other is different. So basically, now, also, it can be a bit difficult to identify the degree to which each need has been met and which level a worker is. So let's take a small example. How is it difficult? Let's say you have food, shelter, water, you know. So income from high employment high enough to meet essential need. Is it? Sometimes you have food but very little food, or shelter but not very good shelter. You know, you're not very well rested at this shelter. So you have these needs, but basically your level of satisfaction within these needs is not very high. So basically, how can you move to the next level? At the same time, you might have friends, you might have, although you don't have job security and so on. So this theory basically have a little bit of limitation. Now, also, money is necessary to satisfy physical needs, yet it might also play a role in satisfying other levels, like status and esteem. How do you think? Basically, most of the things we need to get right now comes from money, so that's another issue. And finally, self-actualization is never permanently achieved. Why do we have different level of satisfaction within us? Because basically a lot of people can never reach self-actualization. Maybe you'd reach self-actualization in health, but you do not reach it in self-actualization in, let's say, job performance, or self-actualization in relationship and so on. So basically it depends. So these are the